I'm going to talk to you about LGBT radicalisation in Scotland. I did mention it in a short clip in my previous video for the Saturday newspaper, but this is such a terrible subject, I'm going to go over it in a bit more detail. I'm very angry. Having read the article now, I really am extremely angry. And yeah, if I start shouting at the microphone, you'll know exactly what's going on. I'm Granny Opterix. All right, it says here, my daughter was radicalised by a cult-like LGBT club in school. Mother pulls child out of Scottish state school to educate her in England to escape charity's reach. Now, I want to tell you about this. This woman said she always regarded herself as a wokerati, as a member of the wokerati, and she believes in state education. But when push came to shove, she took her child out of state education and put her in a school in England. Now, I want you to be aware of this, because that woman has done a huge amount of damage just because she's woke. Because what's happened is she knew there was something odd going on at the school. Instead of fighting the school, she got so horrified by it, she just left the system altogether. And leaving the other parents who don't have her resources, obviously, because she had the resources to pay for her child's private education in England. I'm assuming that must have been a boarding school. Unless she moved house, which would require resources all on its own. And now she's left the state school kids, and their parents to fend for themselves. She is not providing the sort of support that might have rescued the situation for the others as well. And that's the problem with the woke. They're woke, they're left, they believe in X, but when X doesn't suit them, they're off. Because they can afford to be. Holly was drawn to her local school's LGBT Allies Club by her fascination with flags. Now, LGBT Allies Club, that's a lot to say. So I'm going to call it the Illegit Club. Okay? When she began attending classes in March 2021, after her school in East Lothian reopened from lockdown, she found notice boards and classrooms plastered with pride and trans colours. And what I want to know is, why are the teachers plastering the school with pride and trans flags instead of maybe Scottish flag, the Union flag, any of the other flags of our islands? No, pride and trans. Teachers displayed their pronouns on rainbow-coloured signs on their classroom doors. The then 12-year-old, who is autistic and also enjoyed making lists, was soon reciting the wide array of genders and sexual orientations at the family dinner table, which she had discovered through her membership in the school's lunchtime Illegit Club. Holly's mother, Joan, 53, initially had no issue, of course, because she's woke. She says she considers herself a member of the wokerati and an illegit ally, and was relieved that her daughter, who struggled socially, was making friends. However, less than a year later, she says she was forced to pull Holly out of the state school and now sent her to a private school in Northern England. She wasn't forced. Nobody forced her. She knew it was damaging her daughter, so she did her best to remove her daughter from the harm. But she's woke, so she's not going to make a fuss with the school. She's not going to march in there. She's not going to call all the parents and say, look what this school is doing to our children. Let's stop it. She's not going to shout at the SNP, because I'm quite sure she's one of the voters for the SNP, or maybe the Greens, or the Labour Party, who support they're all of a bunch, those guys. No, she's not going to do that. She's just going to use her resources to remove her child The others can go hang. She claims Holly was radicalised by her school, which, like other secondary schools in the area, is signed up to a charter scheme run by the SNP government-funded charity LGI Youth Scotland. The Telegraph revealed on Thursday that as part of the charity's scheme, schools, including primaries, were appointing children illegit champions and being urged to question pupils about their sexual orientation and gender. So kids as young as 12 are being quizzed about who they fancy and what gender they think they are, at a time when they're still trying to find themselves. Schools that signed up for a fee of at least £850, so this is a great money spinner as well, is it not, were ranked on how well they catered for illegitimate Q. No, illegit Q plus. How do you pronounce that? Illegitique plus pupils, and were given guides on how best to achieve this. They say how to best achieve this, and I automatically de-split the infinitive there. It was totally unconscious. How best to achieve this. Check out my video on the split infinitive if you want to know what's going on there. It is backed by the Scottish Government and more than half of the country's secondary schools, and at least 40 of its primary schools are signed up. So they've got these guys going into primary schools. That's ages, 4, 5 to 11. Which Jesuit was it who said, "Give me a child until he's 7 and I'll give you the man"? The SNP government has faced calls to withdraw its school guidance, which tells teachers to be affirming. If the child says they are trans, oh look, they say if a child, singular, says they are trans, so even the Telegraph has caught the bug. In light of the Cass review, the report published last week warned of the risks of social transitioning, including in schools, saying it can lead to children pursuing a medical pathway which may not be in their best interest. You're darn tooting it's not in their best interest. Social transitioning is when someone begins to live as their preferred gender in public, for example, changing pronouns, wearing different clothing and going by a different name. Within months of joining the within months of joining the illegit club, Holly, who her mother says has never been uncomfortable as a girl, announced in a Christmas card to her parents that she'd become their trans son, signing it with her male name. "We thought we were the first ones to know, but it turns out we were the last," Joanne said, and I'm parodying her voice for a reason. She was on to her second male name. I'm sorry, I can't do the Scottish accent. You'll just have to stick with faux upper-class English instead. She was on to her second male name, and she'd been using boys' names at the school for months. We'd been left completely in the dark. I went along with the new name for a while, but as soon as I started to ask questions about what was going on at the school, I was met with a wall of secrecy. When I was bringing kids up, I remember seeing television shows and listening to radio programs and hearing advice from school psychologists saying to kids, if somebody is doing something to you and says, "That's a secret between you and me, don't tell your parents," then that's wrong. If you can't tell it to your parents, it's wrong. Do any of you people remember that? Well, apparently it's right now, just so you know. She went along with the new name, but then she realised there was something else going on. Joanne says she asked the school and LGI Youth Scotland to send her the charter the school was implementing as part of its push to win accreditation from the charity. Oh yeah, it's really important to get accreditation from a charity, not on history, geography, maths, physics, chemistry, none of that stuff, but on your how you push kids into LGBT ideology. That's worth getting accreditation for, is it? She says that both sent her the same one-page poster with no details about the actual requirements. Documents obtained by the Telegraph released through the Freedom of Information laws, which means it was being kept so secret you had to actually call in the law to get the documents, show the school was operating a policy stating parents should not be told if their child has transitioned without their explicit permission. The setting up of an illegit club and the prominent display of flags was another condition sent out by the charity to receive charter status. That charter is so important. At the time, the school had a bronze award, but was working towards silver status. There's nothing like determination. When she joined the illegit club, I emailed the school to explain she was fascinated with flags and lists, Joanne said. She was desperate to fit in, so I suspected where it might end up. Just a minute, I'm not trying to parody her voice anymore, but I was doing it for a reason. I do not respect her. She's a hypocrite. I understand the fix she's in. I applaud the way she's rescued her daughter, but that doesn't change my attitude to her character, which is just about the worst for the rest of society that they could be, because she had the knowledge and the drive and she just dropped it all, left it, rescued her kid, left the others to sink or swim as they may. They said they would keep an eye on her and told me there was nothing to worry about. So when we found out she'd been using a male name, I began to ask questions. I just got silence, so I went down a bit of a rabbit hole. Did you indeed? And what about the other parents? Joanne says she checked her daughter's phone and emails and found worrying material shared between students in the illegit club. Themes include self-harm and anime-style imagery with a sexual element. This is for a 12 or 13-year-old autistic girl. She also uncovered messages from the teacher, who was part of the Allies group, regarding a celebration of National Coming Out Day, which LGI Youth Scotland tells its charter members to promote. The teacher, in another message, berated pupils for not making enough suggestions for Pride Week. Oh God, and not doing their chemistry homework. Nobody seems to be that bothered. And bemoaned the fact that the group was run largely by adult staff rather than led by the students. Joanne believes the school was effectively encouraging pupils to come out as trans to the acclamation of their peers and, of course, the peer pressure to come out, which gets you special category, special acclamation, and vulnerable children will go for that. Now, look, Holly was vulnerable because she was autistic, but there are other children who are just as vulnerable in other ways. There are children who come from, chaotic parents. They want to find a group that they can latch onto. There are children being abused at home one way or the other that find it comforting to have a group around them who think they're okay and not little sods that their parents are calling them. There are children who are just shy. All sorts of children are vulnerable in different ways. I was a teacher. I've seen this. So when this woman takes her daughter out to rescue her, even though she believes, it says so down here, she believes in state education, but not for her, because she's special. Her daughter's special. There should be exceptions made for them. I have no respect for that woman at all. If you believe in state education, fine. Stick with state education. And if it's not right, fix it. But don't say you believe in state education and then go for private education because you're special. That's where I lose respect. I found all this stuff on her phone. She pulled her child out of the school but discovered that others in the area had also signed up for the illegit scheme. One, Dunbar Grammar, organised a Happy Fest event in 2020 which included 2 drag acts, with one drag act called Auntie Climax. How a grown man could do that in a school of kids and sleep at night is beyond me. Because, well, do that, I'm assuming. It's a drag act called Auntie Climax. It's going to be smutty at the very least. It's not what you want children to see in school. Well, unless you're woke, of course. It also endorses notions to children that there are genders such as gender fluid, etc. Joanne said she believes in state education. Oh, here it comes. She believes in state education. But sending her daughter to a private school in England was the only way to get her away from the LGI Youth Scotland. She doesn't believe in state education. She believes in state education for others. She has the resources to get out of it, so that's what she's doing. She doesn't believe in state education. I don't blame her. I do not blame her. Not for rescuing her daughter, but I do blame her for not being aware of herself. Because she's still woke, she's still kidding herself, she believes in state education. Yeah, just not, she's special. Anyway, the girl now has no issues whatsoever with her gender, but had she stayed in that school, it was so embedded within her friendship group that there is no way she would have turned away from that. It's not a friendship group, it's the teachers. Now, why the teachers should spend their time on LGBTQ plus issues instead of grammar and French as a foreign language or whatever, I suspect it's because they're just not that good as teachers. They are just terrible teachers. And this is easy enough to teach, so we'll teach that. And at the same time, you draw the kids away from the parents. They're much easier to handle that way. There's every possibility she would have ended up on a medical pathway. Yeah. But what about the other kids in that school and in all the other schools around? My child was vulnerable and they exploited that. They isolated her from her family, told her to keep secrets from us and filled her head with extreme ideas. That is what cults do, and I feel that this scheme is state-funded radicalisation of children. Yeah, but you believe in state education, don't you? You've seen how the state is ruining your children, and yeah, you still believe in that because you're woke. Just not for you, of course, because you're special. You have the resources, others don't. LGBT Youth Scotland says its charter scheme is followed by more than 200 secondaries, and despite describing itself as Scotland's national charity for LGBTQ plus people aged 13 to 25, it's expanded into primary schools with at least 40 signed up. And again, because the teachers are allowing it. If the teacher said no, our children are here to learn English and geography. We don't need the LGBT stuff. They can do that out of school hours when they're a bit older. That's what the teachers could say, but no. And at this point, I have to say that it's because The SNP are in charge, again, with their allies, the Greens and the Labour Party. And you guys in Scotland are letting it happen. And I know there are lots of people who access my channel who didn't vote for the SNP. I understand that. But still, why aren't you making more of a fuss? Why are you... These are your children. This is your future generation, and your schools are ruining it for all of you, even the ones who didn't vote for the SNP. Don't stand for it. Do something. These are children. Miriam Cates, co-chairman of the New Conservatives group of MPs, I don't know what that is, said the charity's advice to schools breaks all safeguarding protocols. Oh, you bet. LGI Youth Scotland did not respond to a request for comment. East Lothian Council has said its policies were in line with SNP government guidance. And yes, they are. And that's the problem. People of Scotland, wake up. You may want Scottish independence. Is it worth sacrificing your children on this altar? The SNP is no good for you. The Greens are no good for you. Actually, the Labour Party is no good for you either. I can't tell you who's good for you, frankly, because I'm pretty annoyed with the Conservatives. So I don't really know what to say. But just put up a few independents, will you? Save your children, if nothing else. Wake up. Okay, till next time. Why not treat yourself or a favoured relative or friend to these magnificent examples of merch? The mugs and t-shirts come in the Graniopteryx design or Grambo with a firearm or the more deadly knitting needles. Go to www.graniopteryx.com and whatever platform you're watching this on, please click like, subscribe and share, share, share.